Letters of a Woman Homesteader by Eleanor Pruitt Stewart. Chapter 10. The Story of Cora Belle. August 15th, 1910. Dear Mrs. Coney, Grandma Edmondson's birthday is the 30th of May, and Mrs. O'Shaughnessy suggested that we give her a party. I had never seen Grandma, but because of something that happened in her family years ago, which a few narrowheads whom it didn't concern in the least cannot forgive or forget, I had heard much of her. The family consists of Grandma, Grandpa, and little Cora Belle, who is the sweetest little bud that ever bloomed upon the twigs of folly. The Edmondsons had only one child, a daughter, who was to have married a man whom her parents objected to solely because he was a sheep man, while their sympathies were with the cattlemen, although they owned only a small bunch. To gain their consent, the young man closed out his interest in sheep, at a loss, filed on a splendid piece of land near them, and built a little home for the girl he loved. Before they could get to town to be married, Grandpa was stricken with rheumatism. Grandma was already almost past going on with it, so they postponed the marriage. And as that winter was particularly severe, the young man took charge of the Edmondson stock and kept them from starving. As soon as he was able, he went for the license. Mrs. O'Shaughnessy and a neighbor were hunting some cattle that had wandered away and found the poor fellow shot in the back. He was not yet dead and told them it was urgently necessary for them to hurry him to the Edmondsons and to get someone to perform the marriage ceremony as quickly as possible, for he could not live long. They told him such haste meant quicker death because he would bleed more, but he insisted, so they got a wagon and hurried all they could. But they could not outrun death. When he knew he could not live to reach home, he asked them to witness all he said. Everything he possessed he left to the girl he was to have married, and said he was the father of the little child that was to come. He begged them to befriend the poor girl he had to leave in such a condition, and to take the marriage license as evidence that he had tried to do right. The wagon was stopped so the jolting would not make death any harder, and there in the shadow of the great Twin Buttes he died. They took the body to the little home he had made, and Mrs. O'Shaughnessy went to the Edmondsons to do what she could there. Poor Cora Jane didn't know how terrible a thing wounded pride is. She told her parents her misdeeds. They couldn't see that they were in any way to blame. They seemed to care nothing for her terrible sorrow, nor for her weakened condition. All they could think of was that the child they had almost worshipped had disgraced them, so they told her to go. Mrs. O'Shaughnessy took her to the home that had been prepared for her, where the poor body lay. Some way they got through those dark days, and then began the waiting for the little one to come. Poor Cora Jane said she would die then, and that she wanted to die, but she wanted the baby to know it was loved. She wanted to leave something that should speak of that love when the child should come to understanding. So Mrs. O'Shaughnessy said they would make all its little clothes with every care, and they should tell of the love. Mrs. O'Shaughnessy is the daintiest needleworker I have ever seen. She was taught by the nuns at St. Catherine's in the old country. She was all patience with poor unskilled Cora Jane, and the little outfit that was finally finished was dainty enough for a fairy. Little Cora Belle is so proud of it.